English 201, week 14, part 8. I kind of want to close with a lesson that I think not enough English teachers do. I think there's something important about literature that's worth talking about. And I want to kind of make one more point before I leave you all for the semester. Um, this is something that I think is often missed in English literature classrooms. Nobody talks about this. And I think it's important to say something to you about it now. What nobody talks about is that my job as a teacher means I need to pick works of literature to give you so we can have so I can teach you things about it. So I can teach you things about it, so we can have a class discussion about it if we were in person, or a discussion board on Blackboard if we were, online or whatever. So, but you want to my job as a teacher is to give students literature, but also I need to do lectures on it, but also students need to discuss it and students need to write papers on it. This has a funny side effect that nobody talks about, which is that the kinds of poems and plays that work really well in the classroom, meaning they generate a lot of discussion, tend to be overly complicated and tricky and like puzzles that we can solve as a class. So I give you guys little puzzles. Is Prosper a good person or a bad person? That's a little puzzle we could discuss. So it has a funny side effect because for a lot of students, a class like this, depending on your major, for a lot of students, a class like this is like the last time anyone's ever going to ask you to read literature. And I think it's possible for students to feel like literature is a bunch of overly complicated puzzles and it's a stupid fucking waste of time. And I understand why students think that literature is a bunch of overcomplicated puzzles, because teachers give students literature that's an overcomplicated set of puzzles. Because it works good in the classroom, because it's good to have lectures on, good to have discussions about, and good to write papers on. But there is literature out there. There's poems, and stories, and plays and things that are just like much simpler and can do sillier, more fun things than these kinds of complicated, serious stuff. So I just wanted to, and by the way, that doesn't mean it's without irony or metaphor or theme, but just like not everything has to be an overly complicated puzzle to be analyzed. It's just that it seems like it is, because almost all literature chosen for the college classroom needs to be complicated so the teacher has something to talk about, so the students have something to talk about, and so the students have something to write about. So I just wanted to look at some simpler stuff. So I'm going to give you a poem, a modern poem that I think is quite funny. It's right here. It's called Russell Edson's The Fall. There was a man who found 2 leaves and came indoors, holding them out, saying to his parents that he was a tree. To which they said, "Then go into the yard and do not grow in the living room, as your roots may ruin the carpet." He said, "I was fooling, I am not a tree," and he dropped his leaves. But his parents said, "Look, it is fall." Oh God, I love that poem. It's so delightful. There's not a lot to talk about there. We could have maybe 5 minutes on that, I guess. It's a pretty simple thing. For starters, it doesn't look like a poem at all. These lines are long. Like, so essentially, like this isn't like a poetry break. This is just like a sentence you would write in a paper, and then he skips a line and puts another sentence, just a regular sentence, and then another one and another one. So it doesn't, for starters, it's a poem. It doesn't even look like a poem. Also, so a man who found 2 leaves came indoors, holding them out to his parents, saying that he was a tree. To which they said, "Then go into the yard and do not grow in the living room, as your roots may ruin the carpet." He said, "I was fooling, I'm not a tree," and he dropped his leaves. But his parents said, "Look, it is fall." You can still use, it's summary, metaphor, these things still, irony, these things still matter. It's a much simpler process. So like, let's start with something real simple. Summary. Who is the poem about? It's about a man, a grown-ass man. That's already an interesting detail in the poem. It's not about a kid. This could be a story about a kid who brings in 2 leaves and he holds the leaf out like this and says, "Look, I'm a tree." But it's not a kid. It's a grown man. So he comes in and he's got 2 leaves, one in each hand. He's holding his hands out with a leaf on the end of the hand. And he says to his parents, "I'm a tree." That's a metaphor, isn't it? Pretty basic. The man is comparing himself to a tree, right? What does he have in common with the tree? His arms are like branches that have leaves on the end because he's holding leaves in his hand. Pretty stupid, pretty simple. You're not going to be able to write a whole paragraph about that. You can explain the whole thing in a sentence. It's pretty easy. And then his parents say to him, then go into the yard and do not grow in the living room, as your roots may ruin the carpet. This is where it's important that he's a grown man. See, he's not a little kid and they think it's cute. He's a grown man and they agree to the metaphor. They go along with the metaphor. They say, okay, you're a tree. Then you need to leave the house, which is what a parent might say to a grown ass person living in their house. You need to leave the house, but they play along with his metaphor. They continue his metaphor. Then to which they said, then go into the yard and do not grow in the living room, as your roots may ruin the carpet. So he said he's a tree. So they just said, okay, if you're a tree, you probably have roots. Those roots are going to ruin the carpet. Get out of our house, grown man who lives with us. And the guy realizes his parents are using this as an excuse to kick him out of the house, and he tries to stop. He tries to stop. He said, I was fooling. I am not a tree, and he dropped his leaves. But his parents said, look, it is fall. It's funny because the thing he does to stop the metaphor, which is drop the leaves, to say, no, I'm not a tree. See, I don't have leaves in my hand. But trees drop their leaves. And so his parents go, it's fall, because fall is the time of year when trees lose their leaves. It's a metaphor. It's also ironic that the thing he does to stop, it's, first of all, summary, it's a grown-ass man dealing with his parents, and his parents use his dumb behavior as an excuse to try to kick him out of the home. It's metaphor. He compares himself to a tree. And it's ironic because he drops his leaves. He drops the leaves because when he realizes his parents want to kick him out, he says, no, I was just kidding. I'm not a tree anymore. And he drops the leaves. And his parents say, look, that's exactly what a tree does. Its leaves fall and its leaves drop in the fall. It's ironic that the thing he does to stop the metaphor continues the metaphor. That's the opposite of what he was trying to do. What he was trying to do was, I'm only fooling, he said, and he dropped his leaves. He's trying to stop the metaphor, and it causes the metaphor to continue, which is that, he is a tree, which means it's just fall. He has to leave. He shouldn't have his roots. They're going to ruin the carpet. Trees are supposed to be outside of the house, not inside the house. And that's it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the kind of thing we can have like a lengthy class discussion on. It's pretty simple. But like, it's worth pointing out that like literature, and it also, I think it's funny. I think that's a funny poem. I don't know if it's like, it's school and we've been doing online courses for, forever, and it's incredibly aggravating, but like, I don't know. I thought that was a funny poem. And like, that's enough. Like, it's enough to read a poem and be like, that's funny. And then that's it. Like, you don't have to write a term paper on every poem that you see. You know what I mean? It's okay to just like enjoy a poem sometimes. All right, cool. I'm gonna do some more goofy poems, I think. All right, yeah, let's do some other stuff. Let's talk about other and let's talk about other simpler poems. Here's another one. Charles writes landscape with missing overtones. The sun has set behind the blue ridge, and evening with its blotting paper lifts off the light. Shadowy yards, moon through the white pines. That's the whole poem. That's it. That's the entire poem. It's a very short poem. It's not a haiku, but it's like it. It's like a short little poem. The sun has set behind Blue Ridge. That's the name of the mountain. And evening with its blotting paper lifts off the light. Shadowy yards, moon through the white pines. That's it. Whole poem. It's real simple. There's just like one metaphor in it. Evening with its blotting paper lifts off the light. What's blotting paper? So when you write something with an old-fashioned like ink pen, after you're finished writing, the ink can be a little bit wet. That doesn't happen with modern pens, but old-fashioned pens be a little wet. So blotting paper is paper that you use to put on top of the wet ink, and it sort of lifts off the ink to help it dry faster. Because sometimes you'd have to wait a long time for the ink to dry. If you're writing something with a quill pen, like Harry Potter style, with a feather pen or whatever. So blotting paper is the paper that you use to lift off the ink. So there's a simple metaphor. Just like evening with its blotting paper lifts off the light. So just like you would use blotting paper to lift extra ink off the page, evening comes and lifts away the light. That's it. It's a metaphor, but it's an ironic metaphor because the colors have been reversed. Evening lifts off the light. That's something, the blotting paper, which is normally white, is compared to evening, which is dark. And evening lifts off the light, but the light is being compared to the ink, which is black. That's it. It's literally just an interesting metaphor that reverses the colors because the blotting paper is being compared to evening, and lifting off ink is compared to lifting off light. And ink and light you think of as two different things because ink is dark and light is light. So, and that's it. That's the whole poem. We did it. We're done. So I just think it's worth pointing out that poems can just be like nice and simple like that. And I'll pick it up in the next video.